ask that everyone be respectful. I have plenty of security here. If people get out of line, I will ask you to leave and ensure that you leave. So with that, I'm going to read a prepared statement. At the conclusion of that prepared statement, I'll take some comments or questions. As you know, we're here to discuss the officer-involved shooting from April 11, 2013. I've had an opportunity to be thoroughly briefed on this incident and can now provide additional details regarding what transpired last Thursday during this officer-involved shooting. The reports regarding this incident still need to be prepared and reviewed, so what I'm going to provide is a summary of the events that led to this officer-involved shooting. In a situation like this, there are two concurrent investigations occurring. The investigation being conducted by the District Attorney's Office is for determining the legal actions of the suspect and the involved officers. At the same time that the District Attorney is doing their investigation, this department is conducting an administrative investigation to determine if the actions of the officers were within the guidelines and policy and procedures of the Red Bluff Police Department. So now I'm going to give you just a brief overview from where we were, what happened last Thursday on the 11th. As previously reported, the Red Bluff Police Department received a 911 call from a resident at 850 Kimball Road, apartment number 37, on April 11th, 2013 at 7:27 and 54 seconds in the morning. First officer arrived on the scene at 7:31 and 11 seconds. At 7:49 and 38/100ths of a second, a radio transmission of shots fired, man down was received. A request for medical was made at 7:49 and 58/100ths of a second, just 20 seconds after the transmission of shots fired. First officer on the scene contacted a white male who was on the upstairs balcony of apartment number 37. This person was identified as Adam James Stevens. Now I'll give you some brief contact history with Mr. Stevens with the Red Bluff Police Department. Red Bluff PD has had 19 calls for service involving this suspect since July 2012. 5 of those contacts resulted in arrests, of which 3 involved a charge of resisting arrest. Four other officers responded to assist the original officer assigned to this call. These officers were familiar with Adam Stevens' history with the Red Bluff Police Department. Once on scene, the supervisor requested that the less lethal shotgun be deployed. 2 officers remained on the ground in the parking lot while 3 made entry into the apartment. 2 of the officers inside the apartment moved to an interior door which led to the balcony from the living room area of the apartment. The 3rd officer in the apartment posted behind these 2 officers in order to watch and manage the other people inside the apartment. One of the officers had already deployed a baton and his OC spray in preparation to deal and manage the suspect. This was due to the suspect's current agitated state, comments he made to the officers after their arrival, and because of the suspect's prior actions with officers from the Red Bluff Police Department. When the door was opened, they were confronted with the suspect, Adam Stevens. They remained at the door and did not enter the balcony area. The suspect was holding a piece of carpet in one hand, lifting it up in front of his body. The officer with the OC spray deployed the pepper spray, but it was ineffective. With the carpet held in front of the suspect, it made a successful use of a taser, improbable as well. It was at about this point that these 2 officers observed a large knife in the suspect's hand. Down below in the parking lot, the officer with the less lethal shotgun was observing the suspect and also noticed the knife in his hand. This officer estimated the suspect to be about 6 to 8 feet away from the doorway where the other officers were located. This officer observed the suspect advancing toward this doorway and the other officers. The suspect was in a highly agitated state and had made statements indicating that this situation would not end well. This officer advised that he was going to deploy less lethal munitions and began firing the less lethal rounds at the suspect in an attempt to stop him from advancing on the other officers with the knife. Once the officer inside the apartment with the OC and baton saw the knife, He dropped both of these intermediate defensive weapons and withdrew his department-issued firearm. The suspect closed the distance to these officers to approximately 5 feet and raised the knife in an aggressive and threatening manner. One witness described the suspect as lunging towards the officers with his hand and his arm extended towards these officers. The less than lethal rounds were ineffective against this suspect, and both of these officers discharged their firearms due to the obvious and apparent risk to their lives. I will be thoroughly reviewing all reports related to this incident. However, based upon the briefings I have received from my department's administrative investigator, I have preliminarily concluded the actions of these officers were appropriate and they were justified based upon our department policies and procedures. I would like to point out one very important fact, that a knife is a very deadly weapon. In fact, when people use it, we arrest them for assault with a deadly weapon. A knife used by a determined suspect can very rapidly cause serious and fatal injuries. The officers involved in this incident attempted to resolve this situation verbally through the use of intermediate levels of force and with less than lethal munitions before resorting to the use of deadly force. To be very clear, the actions of the suspect in this case dictated the outcome of this incident. Having said that, any loss of life is tragic, and we extend our sincere condolences to the family and friends of Adam Stevens. I'm also very concerned about the officers involved, as well as their families. For the media, this is a photograph. It's enlarged. The blade length is estimated to be 3.5 to 4 inches long, and this is the knife that the suspect had.
I think that's enlarged. So that's not real. That's not accurate.
So now, I will take some questions. I won't, we're not here to make comments. We're here to answer some questions if I can. And I will start with the media. Any questions from the media? Yes, sir.
Approximately how many other people were in the apartment when your officers arrived?
I believe there were 4 other individuals. Yes, ma'am.
Can you say if those 4 individuals, were any of them children or how many adults?
There were some children on scene. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Have these officers been cited for use of excessive force in the past?
First of all, that's an inappropriate question. It's a personnel matter. I wouldn't answer it if I could.
You said Adam was on the outside of the balcony, and the police officers weren't on the balcony. They were inside with the glass closed.
They were at the door, and they weren't at the sliding glass door.
So, in other words, they feared their own lives to the point to where there was more than one officer that had to actually kill him instead of just maiming him so that he couldn't do any harm to the officers instead of actually killing him. I know he had a history, but I mean, he was, in my eyes, that's a brutal killing. He was shot and killed. It's like you guys were basically shoot to kill because you've seen a knife that size, which is gonna do how much damage from one guy. Why couldn't, like, just the hours after or before the one that happened in Reading, they took a man down with one shot, and they didn't have to kill him. That's my.
That's your thought and opinion, and I respect that you have the right to that opinion, but do you have a specific question for me?
No, that's my question,
Okay.
yes, why did they kill
I
him?
would like to know how they was able to spray him with pepper spray. If they were at the door and the sliding glass door is, you gotta go in that door and through the.
Maybe this will help clarify this for you. There are 2 doors to that balcony. They were at a door that led from the living room area to the balcony. Yes, sir.
So when he started to lunge, why didn't they just close the door?
I
That
think
would have protected them, the door would have protected them. Then they still could have tried to talk him out of the situation that you guys were in, or that your officers were in. Simple closing of the door would have totally protected, if he was that far away, you know, he's far enough away, you pepper spray him, okay, now he's starting to charge, okay, just close the door, bam! Okay, instead of, they had enough time to drop this and draw their guns, they had enough time to close the door. That would have put something, the knife wouldn't have went through the door and through an officer, into an officer. Plus he had a carpet in his hand, you're saying, so with a carpet in his hand and a knife, charging towards the door, you couldn't have closed the
The
door.
simple answer to your question is this, is that the officers were confronted with deadly force and they responded with deadly force.
In your opinion.
in your,
Based on this investigation and the crime scene, yes.
Okay.
that knife needs to know that that's not even the actual size of the knife that you just showed.
I said it was in
Yes.
yes, ma'am.
I would like to know why it isn't the actual, a
Yeah, why
copy
isn't
of
it the actual size?
the actual size of the
Just
knife
I-
for running? And sir, you mentioned that Adams passed, and when this gentleman here asked you about the officer's past, we can't discuss that, but we can discuss Adams?
Adams,
Correct.
Why is that,
why
sir?
is that, yeah. His past had nothing to do with what happened with this. I don't care if he did have a past.
His past had to do with how the officers responded to that situation.
Well,
So-
obviously,
And
these
the officer's
officers
past
knew
has
his
something to
past.
Okay,
do-
first of
They-
all, I can only answer one person at a time. So if you have a specific question, I will try to answer that. But make it a question and not a statement.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
sir, again, I'm gonna, if Adams' past can be brought up, why can't the past conduct of these officers involved, and why hasn't that been made public? I understand you concerns for them and their families, but
What about our family?
Yeah.
I think that what we're here today is to stick to the facts of this case. And the facts of this case do include Adam Stevens' previous actions with officers in this department. He had a history of being resistive, which what I was trying to explain is that that is the reason that the officers took the effort, made the effort to have less lethal munitions already deployed. That is the reason why they decided to have OC spray readily available and out of its holster and have that baton so they could handle him without the use of deadly force.
don't we have dogs,
Why
sir?
didn't
Don't we
they
have
use
dogs?
Taser,
Don't we have canines?
We have a single canine who was not on duty that day.
and the
Yes, sir.
tasers?
So I still can't get over the fact, I really want a more clarified answer how more than one or even two shots it is not considered overdoing it, or more than lethal, how that can be
More than
considered
necessary.
trauma, like, because the same incident in Reading, the same day, a guy gets taken down with one shot. Why does there have to be 5, 6, 7 shots fired? Why did there have to be that many shots fired on this situation?
How many actual shots were there?
First of all, to respond to part of what you asked, this was not the same incident as occurred in Reading. That was a completely different situation, and every situation is different. Okay, and when officers are trained to use deadly force, they're used to shoot that weapon until the threat is eliminated.
No, okay, that's.
So
no,
that
I-
is
Why weren't
what
tasers?
happened.
And just one more.
Yes, sir.
Are these the officers that were involved?
No, sir.
No, they're on paper demonstrated.
No, they can't be here.
Stay home.
And then that kind of voids my question, if he was in, I understand he was in such a depressed state that he was actually seen crying.
I don't-
Maybe the officers couldn't see that the man was up there crying desperately, to me, is a cry for help. And if they all knew
I
his
think that what
past-
I'd like to focus on right now is that at the present time that the officers were there, he presented a deadly threat to the officers and that they responded with deadly force.
And there was, so you cite no wrongdoing on their part? Or is it still ongoing investigation?
My preliminary view of the information is that my officers acted appropriately. They acted within Red Bluff Police Department policy and procedure guidelines, and that, as I stated earlier, the actions of the suspect dictated the outcome of this event.
One more, then I'm gonna leave.
Okay?
Based on this shooting here, are you going to now maybe review your departmental policies regarding the use of deadly force with your officers?
One of the reasons for an administrative investigation is to review policy and procedure, determine if additional training is necessary, and that will be obviously a component of that. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
I have a question, because we just went to the district attorney and listened to what he had to say, and your report does not match his. Is there a reason for that?
It's absolutely.
Because it does not match it at all.
I've reviewed the district attorneys, and it's very close.
Well, not for
What is your question? Do you have a
Why
question?
don't they match?
They do match. What is your question?
That was my question. Why
Well,
don't
you
they
need to be
match?
specific. What is it that you think is a contradiction?
You said that they use batons. He has. he
No,
doesn't
what I
say
said is that,
at all.
no, what I said is that they pre-deployed their baton. In other words, they took it out of the holder,
Okay,
and they did that with OC. I said that they deployed OC spray.
and
That's
he
what I
did
said.
not say that anything about pepper spray being taken out of holsters or anything.
Yes, you did.
And
I'm talking about the DA.
I didn't hear that.
Yes, you did.
He did.
Just to correct you,
And-
sorry.
Excuse me. Yes, ma'am, you have a question?
Yes, the officers that are on paid administrative leave, are they still on paid administrative leave and, will they be back on duty as a result of this preliminary report?
Hearing room now.
What I can answer is simply that they are still on paid administrative leave, and as we work through the procedures that we need to do, when that's complete, they will be returned to duty, and I don't know when that will happen. Yes, ma'am.
So how many times was he shot?
I'm not in a position to provide that information today,
Why?
because number one, not something I'm willing to provide to you right now, and I would want to review all the reports before I provide that information. And we are waiting for the report from the Department of Justice Forensic Team in Reading.
Sir, if I was to act in self-defense and I brought this up to the DA, I would, and stab somebody as a result of that, I would be sitting locked up while your investigation continued.
Weren't these
I
officers
can
already
give you a
here?
bunch of names of people that
Is that a question, or?
Yeah.
I want
Yeah,
to,
go.
okay, my question would be, is why would the everyday civilian be locked up while the investigation goes on, but your officers are on paid administrative leave? That doesn't make sense to me.
Well, if I can respond to that, there are many times where someone does commit an act like that, where we do arrest them, and they claim self-defense, and our investigation reveals something different, and they do get arrested and go to jail. However, there are other times where someone is stabbed, and we don't know whether there's a clear-cut violation, and we don't arrest that person. And I know that because I have personally investigated cases like that where I haven't arrested the suspect.
And I
So it
have,
does happen where we don't arrest the suspect.
okay.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So, how you said 3 cops went into the building, or were in the building? Why couldn't 2 tase him and 1 go tackle him and handcuff him? Why couldn't 1 tase him and 2 go tackle
Shoot
him?
him in the knee or something.
Why didn't you also unload
Put him in
him?
the hospital for a year.
You guys had to unload on him just to get him down. 2 of you guys easily could have tased.
Cause he just in custody to kick all
Go
your
back to the car, go into jail.
Seriously, fist in
You want me to try
custody.
and respond to that?
The first one, second
Okay,
one,
as I
third one,
explained
fourth
earlier,
one.
the use of a taser successfully would be improbable with the carpet in front of them, because the probes have to hit the person to be effective. That's the reason the taser wasn't used. And most importantly, and you need to recognize and understand this, we don't tackle people with knives. If that's the impression you have, that that's what a law enforcement professional will do, is tackle someone with a knife, it's probably mistaken. We don't do that. One more question.
I just saw a guy on Alaskan State Troopers do it by himself. Some guy, a Christian Dean, yeah, by himself. Just did it. Guy had a knife and he tackled him by himself, put him in handcuffs, just like that.
Okay.
And 3 cops had to shoot him and kill him.
Shoot him in the face and kill him?
Any other questions regarding this incident that I can have?
So-
Yes, answer.
My question would be, why couldn't they shoot him? And okay, what's considered, where on the body are your officers trained to shoot? Because it seems like they were shooting to kill. They were not shooting to subdue the suspect. They weren't. Or he wouldn't have been hit where he was.
As I previously stated,
And why?
when the officers were confronted with deadly force, they responded with deadly force. And unfortunately and tragically, that did result in the loss of life.
Wouldn't they shoot in front of him, sir, instead of
Why
up
did-
at his face?
Why did they have to shoot him in his face? Why couldn't they have shot him anywhere else?
I'm not going to respond to that question. That's not a good question. Yes, sir.
So how many shots does it take for you to consider, that was deadly force?
That was over.
That your officer actually overdid it and it was considered,
I think what I'm trying to express to you is that the use of a firearm is deadly force, whether it's 1 round or a number of rounds.
Okay,
So if there's not any more specific questions, I'm going to conclude this press conference. Yes, sir, do you have a question?
I'm not sure if I missed it earlier. How many officers fired?
I didn't
They
say
won't
that.
answer that. Why do we have officers, I look around and there's concern and caring, but then we got, and no disrespect, but I feel like you're standing there smirking, and I don't understand that. This is not a funny thing. This is our family. He has a child due, less than a month. He was 25 years old 2 days before this happened. And you're standing there with a smirk on your face, like it's
I don't
okay.
think that's what he's doing.
When he was just released.
He was just released.
Not
I
at
picked him up
large.
from the jail. You guys released him. And now we got an officer standing here with a smirk on his face. It's ridiculous. And you're this.
Any other questions from the media?
Of course.
Can I come up and take a picture of the knife picture?
I'll provide an opportunity as soon as we
Why
are
isn't it
done here.
actual size? Why is it not a copy of an actual size of the knife instead of blown up? I don't understand that.
Any other
Can we
questions?
get that answer, please, sir? I'm just curious at why you wouldn't show it actual size instead of blown up to make it look like something bigger than it is.
The photocopy was manipulated to avoid showing specific pieces of evidence that may have been upsetting to you. So it was done for your behalf.
So it's done bigger to,
It
than
was-
its actual size to hide evidence,
We're not trying to hide,
stuff from us?
we're not trying to confuse the fact that the blade length was about 3.5 to 4 inches. That's why it's on that. It's just easier to show it to a group of people when it's a larger object. That's it,
But
nothing
it
more.
also makes it look like something
Like it's
bigger
a
than it is,
We're not
sir.
intending to do that. We know what the size of the knife is. It's still a deadly weapon.
But see, the rest of us don't.
And I explained to you that we did intentionally manipulate it so that we would avoid showing specific pieces of evidence that you would find very disturbing and upsetting.
Is there any other evidence that you intentionally manipulated?
I didn't manipulate the evidence. We
That's what you just said, sir.
photographed
Okay.
this copy. We did it so that we wouldn't upset you.
To
And
show
that's
it
the
actual
simple answer.
size
But
as
we're already
opposed to that.
upset.
And
Show an
understandably
actual
so.
size as opposed to
This
that.
concludes our press conference. Thank you.